Hello and welcome to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined as always by my friend and yours, Mr. David Sparks.
Hello, Stephen. How are you today?
I am good. How are you?
Excellent. Looking forward to today's episode. We've got a guest. Welcome to the show, Tyler McRae.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, I mean, you've got a great story to tell, Tyler, so we're really happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I just want to start out by saying thanks for having me here, guys. I'm just a random guy that lives in a really small town in Arkansas, so just a pleasure to be here and chat with you today. I'm a husband to a lovely wife. I have 4 children. And that's just a little bit about my background. But I work at a church currently, so I'm the music minister at a church here in Arkansas, and so that's my day job. And I never really had much to do with automation and technology as I was growing up, and so. Really, when I got into technology, I got my first iPhone way back in, I guess, 2013. And so I just didn't really have a lot to do with technology, didn't have a computer much growing up. And anyways, as I got into my degree in college, I just have a biology degree. Again, nothing related to computer work or automations or technology. And so when I got my first job, I actually started my career in a manufacturing business as a continuous improvement coordinator. And so through that, I found that I had an interest in data analytics. A lot of things there at the facility was done in things like Microsoft Excel. So there were many processes that were really manual, either paper or just stuck in an Excel file somewhere. And so anyways, I really learned about Microsoft Excel and data analytics, and through some of that realized that there was opportunity to automate processes using technology with things like Visual Basic scripts and things like that. And so that was kind of really my first, venture into automation and technology was through the Microsoft platform.
I'm going to let you in on a secret. Most of our listeners are not computer science majors. It's okay. Power users come in all shapes and sizes and stripes. And the thing that you said is what happens is like you're a user and you realize you want to get more out of it and you find an angle to become a power user. So you are one of us, Tyler. Before we get into the depth of it though, Tyler, I wanted to take a minute because gang, it's that time again.
It is. It is time for Relay for St. Jude. It's hard to believe, but it is back. September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And we use this as a community to come together in the fight against childhood cancer. This is the 7th year the Relay community is rallying to support St. Jude. We have raised, gang, over $4 million as a community for St. Jude since 2019. And it blows me away. St. Jude opened back in 1962. When they did, childhood cancer was largely considered incurable. But today, thanks in part to better therapies St. Jude has helped develop, more than 80% of U.S. childhood cancer patients survive, including my son. This is why we started this. My son is one of those 80%. And St. Jude is special because they care for the world's sickest children regardless of their race, ethnicity, beliefs, or ability to pay. So when we showed up to St. Jude, I was not given a bill for our son's 18 rounds of chemotherapy and surgeries and other treatments. St. Jude takes care of that, and they're able to do that because people like us donate. People like us give to support this mission. Patients receive the customized care they need to treat childhood cancer and other life-threatening diseases, no matter what barriers they face. And as a patient family, as a patient dad, I can tell you how much it means knowing that my kid got the best treatment on the planet for his disease and that treatment was successful. So, what are we doing? You want to go to stjude.org/relay and give. Again, the community has been incredibly generous over the last 7 years. And we're asking you to be generous once again. Donors making an individual gift of $60 or more can redeem a digital bundle of campaign-themed wallpapers and a screensaver. Making a gift of $100 or more, you can redeem this really cool sticker pack. And this is lots of great stuff. stjude.org/relay. This is about giving these families more tomorrows. So please go stjude.org/relay to donate or start your own fundraiser today.
And just to tack on a little bit, when I met the folks from St. Jude, they told me that the Mac Power Users is one of the most generous audiences on Relay every year. So, gang, the gauntlet has been thrown.
That's right. It is time. So go check that out, please.
All right, Tyler. So you backed your way into becoming a power user.
Yes, I would say that's exactly how I would describe it. At the facility I worked at, I was the young guy that just came out of school and worked with a lot of veteran supervisors and people that worked in a manufacturing facility. So every single question that was related to a computer was sent my way. And so, like I said, I really got into the Microsoft world, kind of understanding that automation was even possible, really. And so there were a lot of wonderful tools through the Microsoft platform that really got me into understanding what technology could even do as far as automating processes. And so there were just a lot of tools, the web automation tools with Microsoft Power Automate that really opened my eyes to these things and really taught me a lot about APIs and JSON and all of those fun little technical things that are around the automation and technology.
Steven, you like how he did that? He says, I don't know much about technology, but now he's talking about APIs.
Yeah, no, he jumped right to it.
Yeah, I mean, just straight in. In the 90s, I used to do Word Basic programming. Does that even exist anymore? I don't know if that exists anymore.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, David, but I'm sure it was powerful in its time.
It was good for a young lawyer because I automated all my documents with Word Basic. And but same thing, right? You build what you need for the job that you have.
That's exactly right. And so I guess part of my story too, around the year 2021, right after the wonderful time of COVID, based on some personal religious beliefs, I left that job in manufacturing, and that's when I began full-time music ministry work at the church that I attended. And so I was in data analytics more at that point, moved around from continuous improvement to more of a data analytics role, again, utilizing technology and the Microsoft Power Platform in my company. But I left all that and went to be a music minister. And there were some interesting things that I found out through that as well. Even though it was a much different atmosphere, there were still technology in use. There were still computers in use, and there were still people that kind of relied on me to understand some of that technology and how it could work for us. And so really, with the church work, that's when I got into my first Apple computer. So I had a Mac Mini that I used as a full-time device there, with an iPad that I carried around with me everywhere else to kind of do note taking and things like that. And so through that, I realized that there was a ton of opportunity with the Apple computer and the devices to do a lot of automation. And so that's really when I started doing just a lot of research on what was available. And I'm sure we'll talk about apps like Hazel and Keyboard Maestro and shortcuts, of course. But those were some of the things that I started realizing with my church and the staff that we had. We're a pretty small to medium-sized church, but only a few of our staff members. So really trying to understand what I could do with some of those tools and those apps to help me manage my day-to-day is kind of where I landed right off the bat.
I've said it before, but we've had over the long run of Mac Power Users, we've heard from so many preachers, priests, rabbis, monks that are using Apple technology to get their job done because it's such a classic use case, right? You've got limited time and budget and you want to make a professional product. And there's just a lot of you out there that are listening to Mac Power users and using this stuff.
Yeah. Tyler, I'm curious, the transition from using automation on Microsoft platforms to using automation on the Mac and other Apple platforms. How was that transition? Did you find that some of the basics you had learned in terms of inputs and outputs that carried over? Did you feel like you're kind of starting on solid ground, or did you feel like you were kind of starting a step back? We don't talk to many people who make such a radical shift in the technology they're using. I'd just love to hear about that.
Yeah, so I would say that I was aware with my iPhone, at least, of the workflow app. I purchased that app right after I got my iPhone. It was also the same time I was starting my career at the manufacturing facility, using, of course, these Windows machines and Dell PCs and things like that. And so I didn't really know what to do with workflow when I when I bought it initially. And so over time, as I learned, like you said, it was a lot of the basics and foundations of just inputs and outputs. That's exactly how Microsoft Power Automate worked. And so I spent a lot of time learning about that. And of course, they have all of the plug and play actions and triggers that are available. And so through a lot of that, I learned what web automation could do and some of the even limitations of it. But moving from that to the Mac Mini, and then just needing some of those tools, I just started looking online and doing some research and realized, oh wow, there's a lot of the similar type automation tools available, but even better in my opinion. And a lot of the things that we could do with like Hazel, for example, being able to monitor documents and things, it definitely just launched me into this increased curiosity of what I could do with an Apple device, having kind of this base using Windows machines and learning some of the basics of automations through tools like Power Automate and workflow to a degree.
Yeah, there's a lot of people on the PC side that really want Hazel on Windows, and I just don't think they're ever going to make anything like it because it's a different market.
It is interesting though how those basic structures really are the same across these apps. So we're actually getting ready to do an updated Keyboard Maestro episode, and I've spent a lot of time in it. I moved a lot of stuff to it, which we're going to talk about next time. But really, automation comes down to like I have something that needs to be done, and I want to do it in a repeated, reliable fashion. And it's so interesting to me when people make transitions between different applications or technologies and kind of realize like, oh, this is really kind of the same concepts are everywhere. And of course, you mentioned workflow, which became shortcuts. I still think about, I like remember where I was. My phone blew up. I was eating lunch with some friends. We were having tacos and like, hey, workflow got bought by Apple. And it's like, what is going to happen? And, I think their track record's pretty mixed with what they've done with shortcuts, but it is so interesting that they've gotten in the game with a first party thing.
I would beg to differ. I feel like that is like one of the best acquisitions that Apple's done. I mean, I don't know. They've made it accessible to everyone. It's taken them a long time to get it everywhere, but that app got better getting internal, I think.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I would say there's more to do. And
yeah, no, look, there's always more to do. And
yeah.
Apple and automation is a weird, it's just a whole story,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I just feel like, I think that was one of the good things they did. I mean, there's apps they've bought where you're sad, but this one, I feel like it was a good thing in the long run.
Yeah. So Tyler, now that you are in the Apple space, what sort of hardware and software are you using?
Yeah, so my day to day, I use a Mac Mini. So that was something that I got when I went to the church. Right now, I have an M2 Pro Mac Mini with 32 gigs of RAM, and it does pretty much everything that I need. I also have a personal MacBook Pro that I have that's an M1 Max with 32 gigs of RAM, and so I had a Intel Mac for I guess about 10 or 11 years that I'd purchased while I was in college. And so I went from that device. I had it available. I never really used it much because I was working and using my work PC and things like that. So it just kind of stayed off to the side. But going from that device to these Apple Silicon devices was quite a big jump, and I was really impressed with some of the performance that I was able to do. And of course, with
Mhm.
my church work, I do a lot of video editing and things like that, and so these machines are just wonderful for that. I barely have to wait for for any of the processing to take place.
Yeah.
It's quite impressive.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we every time this comes up, we talk about it. It's just how good Apple Silicon is, and even an M1 or an M2, right? I mean, the M1's been out 5 years, like still holding their ground, still doing just amazing things. Is the Mac Mini common for y'all at your church? Is that what people are using?
So I'm the only staff member that uses Apple devices,
Okay.
but I'm also the guy that buys all of the technology. And so
Sure.
everywhere throughout the church where we have stations that we use to present lyrics or things like that, I have Mac Minis everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it works. But everyone else is still using the Windows machines, even though I've recommended the Apple Gear quite heavily.
But you're also the music minister. So, like, you deal with media and music. So, I feel like for a lot of folks, Apple is just the better platform for stuff like that.
Absolutely. I think that's 100% correct, and told someone that this morning about how well that the Apple Gear works for the creative side of the world and the music and the videos and all of that. It's really great for that use case.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by 1Password. Go to onepassword.com/MPU to get 20% off. 1Password is the industry-leading password manager for work, family, and life. With it, you can keep your digital life secure while staying productive with the industry's most usable password manager. 1Password lets you securely save, autofill, and share everything. Take the hassle out of generating passwords and wave goodbye to tedious password resets. Save and autofill unique passwords, credit cards, addresses, and more with the best password manager for individuals and families. It really makes it easy to have a secure online presence with 1Password. Wherever you go, it offers to give you a password or generate a new one if you don't have one yet. Whether you're using passwords or passkeys, 1Password has you covered. And everything is behind that secure 1Password vault. The thing I love about it is you can access your saved information on any device securely. You can share logins, credit cards, and more with loved ones without any risk. And it has this great service called Watchtower that protects you. No one can keep track of all the data breaches in the news. Watchtower does the hard work for you by flagging compromised passwords and other security issues related to your saved items. You can then update the affected account with a new password before an attacker can do any damage. I'm a big fan of 1Password. I like the company. I like the people behind the company and how dedicated they are to protecting me online. I've been a subscriber since they started. And if you haven't checked them out yet, you should. Go to onepassword.com/MPU today. Check it out. Get that 20% discount on your plan and start protecting yourself and your family online.
So we'll talk a little bit more about the tech you're using at work. Some of this is in my background, former life, doing IT, AV stuff. And one thing that caught my eye immediately when we were talking was ProPresenter, which people may not be familiar with. It is not unlike something like Keynote or PowerPoint in that you are doing presentations with it, but it's really geared towards live production. Could you kind of explain some of its strengths in that arena?
Yeah, so ProPresenter is something that the church actually already had in place when I started, and so I had to just learn, as much as I could about the software itself. But you're exactly right; it's tailored towards live production, and so lyric projection, it can play any kind of audio file that you throw at it. You can organize your service in basically any way, shape, or form that you want. But the real benefit that I have found through using ProPresenter is because we don't have just a tremendous amount of volunteers that help out, and so using these tools, I've really been able to simplify what would take place on, say, a Sunday morning through service. So there's all kinds of built-in automations within ProPresenter itself that allow you to initiate different views that are seen on the screens, that can send messages to your teams so you can communicate with them in real time. Just a lot of really fine details that make the live production seamless. And so I would say that for us specifically, we maybe use about 10% of its capability. It's a massive software that can do just about anything, but just a wonderful tool that's made simplifying our service on Sundays, quite a bit to help our volunteers with some of the, just keeping things basic for them.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, these tools that have developed, like anybody now can put together a good live show with tools like this.
That's right, and again, kind of just taking away from the fact that there's actually quite a bit of uh, technical things happening in the background that takes away that from my volunteers, so they can come and
Yeah.
just be able to run a service seamlessly. Within ProPresenter as well, we have a lot of our live streaming that's all done through ProPresenter. So they've really incorporated just about anything that you can think of from a at least a church perspective and a service that's all integrated. And so, for example, to just talk a little bit more about some of the live stream capabilities in ProPresenter, we have that pointing to a service called Restream.io. And what Restream does is it takes our video feed and our audio feed that's all hooked into ProPresenter, and then it goes and can stream that service to multiple platforms. And so, for example, we're streaming to Facebook Live and we're streaming to YouTube. Those are just the main two that we use. But Restream is able to connect to a lot of other services as well. And so that's again just this idea of multi-streaming a live stream. They were trying to use OBS software before I started.
That's what we use. And anytime something breaks, it's like, well, gonna spend some time on this today.
That's right. And so, I really I think a lot about simplicity when I think about these tools. And so for us, Restream was an amazing software that integrated perfectly with ProPresenter, that we just hit a start stream button, and then we don't have to think much more about that.
And then what are you doing for switching and audio control?
Yeah, so again, ProPresenter, I would say, is kind of our main hub when it comes to all of our other devices and gear that are connected. And so we have a Behringer X32 soundboard that's just connected over to the Mac Mini via a USB cable. So directly out of the back of the soundboard, it can pass as many channels as the board contains, but we just pass a live stream feed over to ProPresenter. And so that's how we get all of the audio from our service into the software. And then we also for cameras, we have a simple setup, but it's really powerful in that we have an ATEM Mini Pro video switcher. And so that's a very small version of what ATEM, they make many larger switchers, but for us, it's just a 4 input switcher. So we actually only use 2 cameras, and those cameras are a Black Magic design. Both of them are 4K cameras, but different styles. One is a studio camera, and one is called the Pocket Cinema, which is a much smaller camera. And so just being able to feed both of those into this ATEM switcher via an HDMI cable, which is then, again, just connected by a single cable, a USB-C cable, to our computer, our Mac Mini, that, again, ProPresenter sees all of these different pieces of equipment attached and takes the video feed and the audio feed from each of those individually.
Doesn't the the A10 Mini Pro, that doesn't that downscale it to a 1080, the 4K feed?
So yes, with what we are doing with Pro Presenter as well and Restream and all of these live stream tools that we're using, we leave
Yeah.
everything pretty much at 1080. I save a version of that locally that's the higher quality, but for everything that we're sending to our live streams, we're totally fine with 1080 and the high
Okay.
definition, and it works for us and our needs.
Yeah, because you were talking about the 4K cameras. I wanted to make sure people understand that. Yeah, I mean, and I think you can buy a fancier ATEM switch that'll keep it at 4K if you want, but probably for streaming, 1080 is probably where you need to be at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a good place for us, and again, how we kind of operate, and the priorities that we really put forward when we think about our live stream and kind of why we do what we do with that. So
What other hardware are you using over there?
yeah, so a few other pieces of hardware that we have that I find some good use out of. One is the Loop Deck. So it's very much like the Stream Deck. I was really not too familiar with these devices at one time, and so I found the Loop Deck before I found the Stream Deck somehow.
Yeah,
Both are very capable devices. With the Loop Deck specifically. So I guess just to explain that, if people are unaware, it's just a piece of hardware that has a lot of configurable buttons, right? That you can set up different keyboard shortcuts or lots of other automations through different software profiles and things like that, which I know you guys have talked a lot about Stream Deck in the past. And so very similar to that.
yeah. I feel like the Loop Deck is really more production oriented, like for the stuff you're doing. Like it's got a lot of dials on it, and like there's a lot of setups for it to work with Final Cut and like the big streaming software platforms. For like hackers like me who just want to push a button and have your computer do something, I feel like Stream Deck is better for that. But for like if you're running a live show, Loop Deck is something you should be checking out. Or if you're doing like high end editing, I think that's another good use for Loop Deck.
Yeah, I think that's right, David. And again, we use things pretty simply, and so I would say for our current needs, we probably could get by with the Stream Deck, but it does have some, like you said, some dial knobs that are able to control audio and things like that. And so we're just using it basically for some of those keyboard shortcuts to control Pro Presenter or to initiate a certain action in Pro Presenter or switch slides, things like that. So pretty basic, but very helpful to kind of contain all of that into a single device where our volunteers not bouncing from one side of the sound booth to the other to try to get to the audio board or the computer or the camera switcher, right? So you can kind of
Yeah.
configure all that into a single device, hardware device, and that kind of leads me to one of the other things that we've just started. I've really started kind of investigating more. It's called BitFocus Companion. And so basically, it is just a software that you can run on these computers that really expand the capabilities of these loop decks and stream decks to where you can just configure buttons and actions, but it's really directed towards a lot of the audio visual gear that we're talking about. So they've got a lot of the connections already built for things like the Behringer X32 and Pro Presenter and all of our cameras and switchers. They have all of these integrations with those devices, and that's been really pretty interesting to look at to again configure it to where these buttons can be on my loop deck for our volunteers.
Yeah, I had never heard of this software before you had given it to us for the show, but what a great idea. Because there's a lot of like common hardware and people just want things to be able to talk to each other. And these guys are kind of like the intermediary. They're in between getting you whatever you need to send a signal from one device to another. It's the kind of app I read. I'm like, man, I need to find a reason to use this. you know?
For sure, and it's something that I'm just starting to really explore. But it seems like a very it'll be very helpful for us just to integrate all of these devices into a single hardware device and a button. So I'm pretty excited about getting into that. And I guess one other piece of software that I have to mention is it's a software called Mixing Station. And so it's an app that I have on my iPhone and my iPad. But what it is just a configurable audio interface, basically. So it connects to, there's many different soundboards that app can connect to. Of course, we're using it with the X32, but you can basically design what you want your iPad display to be to interface with your soundboard. And so that's been incredibly useful for us, where I've been able to build really kind of a single page of sliders and faders for audio control and different mutes and different buttons that I can configure to talk to my soundboard. And so we really kind of have this one, almost an audio dashboard, if you want to look at it like that or think about it like that, that controls, pretty much everything that we do in a normal Sunday service. We have it all on this one page, so I can hand that to pretty much anyone, and they can use that to move us through our service.
Yeah, what's cool about that is a lot of or several other board manufacturers have their own iPad apps, but like at least the ones I'm familiar with, they basically either are very simplified or they're too complicated, right? It's like I don't need to do everything I could do on my board. Maybe I just need to be sitting in the room making some little adjustments. And so having the capability to kind of build what you need is really cool.
That's exactly right. I've found that mainly the other apps from the board manufacturers are overly complex and throw in a lot of other features that I'm not really that interested in, or just that the user interface itself is not really conducive to being able to make quick changes or to even have the right channels or information that you need there on the screen. So Mixing Station has been wonderful, and I've made different, of course, dashboards for all of our different soundboards all over the church and different services and different things that we do. So it's a really powerful app and just an amazing tool for what I do specifically.
One of the themes I'm getting from this discussion is, and people listening should think about this in their own setups. It's when you're building a system, you have to think about the users. And in Tyler's case, he's got volunteers coming in on Sundays. I would assume there's some turnover with that. And also just, people are busy and can't make every week. As opposed to like if you're running a musical in Broadway, you'd have professional guys at the board every night. You don't have that. So as you're building the system out, a theme that you keep saying is, I want it to be easy. I want it to be understandable to volunteers. And I think that's a really important thought when you're building a system, whether it's for your staff or for your church volunteers or whoever you're working with this stuff.
That's exactly right, David, and that's just the reality of my day to day and how our volunteers are at my like I said, a pretty small to medium sized church, but just people that maybe don't even have a lot of the really technical know how, but are really willing to be there and to serve and to be committed to that. Just needing to know how do I do this, and so
Yeah.
these are helpful for those types of situations.
But what we haven't talked about is you actually playing music. What do you use for that?
Yeah, so the iPad is really the centerpiece of all of the music, playing that I do and the chord charts that I use. And so there are a few apps that I've really liked over time. One is called OnSong, and I would just say that it's probably the most feature rich chord chart app that I've ever played with. So, for example, you can connect these Bluetooth pedals that are able to switch pages. So I'm a guitar player, so both of my hands are occupied, and so being able to step on a pedal to switch pages has been really helpful. But OnSong takes it even further than that. They have a whole system built around MIDI control, and so with a Bluetooth pedal, you can actually configure different MIDI notes, is what they call that. It's something that I guess some of our automation tools and some of these softwares like ProPresenter and Behringer X32, you can actually send these notes over Bluetooth or over the network via Wi-Fi, and actually take action on these pieces of equipment. So changing pages or changing lyrics in ProPresenter, you can send MIDI notes and MIDI control to do that. Muting different channels on the X32, you can do things like that. And so when the time is needed, I will sometimes set up some of those little basic automations through an app like OnSong, which is just incredibly helpful.
So the one we always talk about whenever music comes up is Fourscore, which allows you to store your charts. But what's the difference between those two, OnSong and Fourscore?
Yeah, so with Fourscore, which is also a really wonderful app, I would say it's tailored more towards. I work with a choir, for example, and so there's a lot of sheet music with choir arrangements and choir pieces that may be 10 to 15 pages easily. And so what Fourscore does really well is just it's an app that allows really great annotations and modifications to a piece of sheet music, for example. And so I use that often when I'm working with my choir. It has some really neat little features, which some of the other music displaying apps are doing this now too, but they're using the facial scanners to be able to actually switch pages, based on like winking at the iPad or moving your lips a certain way or turning your head. And so those are all pretty neat little tricks that these app developers have made to help you, again, just keep your hands open when you're conducting a choir. Your hands are also in use for that. And so really OnSong versus Fourscore, I would say really kind of two, at least for me, I've found two different use cases. The choir arrangements and the sheet music itself, whereas with OnSong, I'm using it for chord charts, and it's integrated with some of the services that I use to get the chord charts and actually download that information. And so it's a straight download into OnSong. It's integrated in that way, so I can just go search for those songs and download them directly. So those are kind of the differences, but between the two. And then I guess the last chart that I really use is something called Planning Center Music Stand, which kind of leads us into a bigger discussion around church management.
Okay, so tell us about the Planning Center Music Stand.
Yeah, so with Planning Center, it's a total church management system. Part of that system is something that they call Planning Center Services. So I go in and I configure, what my entire Sunday service will look like. So I put in all the songs and all the transitions there. And what Planning Center Music Stand does is it's just completely connected to that service. So when I go and say what song we're doing, what key we're doing it in, I open up Planning Center Music Stand, and it's ready to go. It has all of my charts that I need, and it's just, again, a chord chart displaying app or a sheet music displaying app. And really what we've done is, with my volunteer base and what I would call our praise band, we use all that together. And so those apps can communicate with each other. When I invite them to the service, they can open up and see all the information that they need to conduct the service with me. So it's kind of what I'm using on the day-to-day basis now. And it's where I've landed, just due really to the fact that it's all integrated with the rest of our church management system, and that my volunteers, it's so easy to coordinate my volunteer work through that platform.
Yeah. Is that an iPad app?
It is, and it's actually, I believe, just like maybe a web-based app, so you can go access it on the web, but they do have an iPad app itself that you can download that just looks kind of like a view into the web app itself. But it works well, integrates with the Bluetooth pedals, and so it's really fulfilling the need that we have, especially around the coordination of the team.
I got to ask, as a musician, 11 or 13-inch iPad?
So I use an 11-inch iPad. I've actually never owned a 13-inch iPad. The 11-inch is great because I take it with me and use it for things like note taking, right? And so as soon as I get off the stage, I put it in its keyboard case, and then I go and take notes on the sermon and things like that. And so for me, being able to be really portable with that device, I again use it for for notes when I'm maybe teaching a class or things like that. It's just so portable. I really have liked the 11-inch. I've held the 13-inch before and looked at it some, and I think it may just be a little too large for what I need. But with some of the upcoming changes with iPad OS, I'm kind of intrigued with the larger iPad.
I have a prediction that once you hit about your mid 40s, the 13 is going to look very attractive when you're on stage and trying to see the music.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
Just a theory. Just a theory.
Oh, we need a bigger sanctuary. He upgraded his iPad. Yeah. What are y'all using for some of the more traditional productivity stuff around the organization? I mean, I'm sure you got people doing email and calendar and task management. Is a lot of that centralized where you're saying, hey, this is what we're using? You let people do their own. Where do you kind of stand on that?
Yeah. So after I left the manufacturing company, again, I was really involved with a lot of the Microsoft tools. And so I was able to find that, Microsoft offers some pretty generous nonprofit licenses. And so that was initially what I set up for the team. So we use Outlook now. We use things like Microsoft Teams, especially for communication and file sharing between our groups, which works well, with them being on Windows machines and me on the Mac. It's just an easy way for us to share files and documents and chat between, with each other. And then again, with Outlook, we have all of the email needs and calendar features that we need through that. So that's primarily what we use just for day-to-day work. And then, like I said, we've really integrated Planning Center. So they have a lot more modules than just the services module. So they have things, it's really our people management database. So that's a module, they call it people. There's a calendar module there that, again, integrates really well with the rest of their tools. So we're even using the calendar through Planning Center. It's basically integrated to this app that Planning Center allows the congregation to actually use, which is a pretty interesting, it's been really interesting for me to try to show people how to use a church app. But it's tailored towards our information and our calendar and things that we can kind of build out in an app itself. And so most of the church management really happens within Planning Center's ecosystem, but just on the local devices themselves, we really kind of rely on the Microsoft tools for that.
Do you have users that sort of run into the issue? Like I have it in my own life, right? Like I have this piece of information. Is it a task? Is it a note? Is it a calendar event? Like, do you find that the Microsoft like Outlook kind of has all of those things? Like, do you find that that's a useful thing for your types of users where they don't really have to worry about what app it's in? It's just kind of like, hey, it's in the Microsoft ecosystem or it's in the church planning software, and that's enough.
Yeah, it's been pretty challenging because there are so many options when it comes to a lot of that. And so really my team here and the staff that I'm involved with and work with, they just kind of rely on me to say, hey, what are we using? And so, there's, for example, in our weekly staff meeting that we have, I'm the one on my computer kind of taking notes about what's happening. And all of those tasks end up in Microsoft Planner is what it's called. And so everyone knows that they get emails from Microsoft when they have tasks due and things like that. Our pastor uses OneNote for all of his notes that he takes during staff meeting and outside of the staff meeting. So he kind of knows where his information is. So it's kind of on an individual basis, but for something that our entire team is using, really they've kind of just relied on me. And so when I look at that, I just try to, again, back to this idea of simplicity, what is going to be the easiest thing for our team to wrap their mind around. And a lot of that is just Microsoft Teams has all of these other tools integrated. So they can go to Microsoft Teams for chat, for their calendar, They can see all their tasks that are available there. And so that's been really helpful, just trying to think about, again, this idea of simplicity. And when people, of course, ask, like, what do you think I should be using? I'm definitely pointing them towards the tools we already have in place, right?
This episode of Mac Power Users is brought to you by Indeed. Hiring the right person for your team is so important. Get it wrong, and you can expect stress for everyone involved. Thankfully, Indeed are there to help you get it right the first time. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster, and it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data worldwide, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. What I love about Indeed is they make it easy for people who are hiring. That is a complicated task. I've done a bunch of it over the years. Honestly, it can be a little overwhelming. And Indeed's tools make it really easy to make sure you get in front of the right people. And with sponsored jobs, there are no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. And how fast does all this happen? Well, in the minute or so I've been talking, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/MPU. That's Indeed, INDEED, Indeed.com/MPU. Go there now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/MPU. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Our thanks to Indeed for their support of the show and all of Relay.
Tyler, the guy who kept saying how he's not a techie, made an app. So, Tyler, you're our first official vibe coder on the Mac Power Users. I want to give you a gold star for that. But tell us, Tyler, how you made an app.
Yeah, well, thanks for the gold star. I appreciate that, David. But
They're very rare, so yeah.
I don't have one.
You actually have two. You didn't know that.
Oh, there we go.
I just didn't tell. They were secret gold stars.
Secret gold stars.
So, Planning Center, back to just to get us to where I landed on an app. Planning Center has a pretty robust API that's pretty well documented. That's free to the public. You can go and find all of that information there. And so, I had this idea where there were some things that I had built using Microsoft Power Automate that connected to our Planning Center database that, I found really helpful. And just to briefly talk about that, things like getting a list of our congregation members, our active members, and we use that to work through prayer time and to reach out and make contacts. Well, I automated all that using their API and Microsoft Power Automate, which led me to think about what would it look like if I built a shortcuts utility app that did the same thing. So that's kind of where the idea started. And, as you get into some of these automation tools and trying to build scripts for things, you start to get in your mind how a lot of this kind of works. And I just really had this desire, like I wanted to build an app, and just to say that I did it. But as I thought about that more and this idea of connecting shortcuts with Planning Center, that's really the idea of actions for PCO. Planning Center Online is what that stands for. And so as I really started to try to get into that, I don't have any programming knowledge as far as particular languages or actual coding structure and ideas. And so, of course, in today's world, I started chatting with some of these chatbots and these LLMs about what it would look like for this idea. Really just more of a dialogue back and forth on what is possible, how this might look, and to help me get started with that. And so, really, I got into using. It was around the time, I guess, the Chat GPT models. It was GPT 3.5, and it was Gemini, I believe, 2.0, and those were what I was trying to use outside of, once I moved past dialogue, to really just think about helping them, using them to help me code the actual application. And
Sure.
so I started by, I just thought to myself, like, here's what I want to do. I would tell it, it would spit out some code, and it didn't work. And so, as I did that for a while and realized, okay, this isn't really capable of doing what I want it to do, I started thinking more about, documentation and being able to get the documentation from the websites of these tools, and use those to feed into, some of the dialogue there. And so, I found that Google Notebook LM was extremely helpful to me, because I put a lot of the documentation around the Planning Center API, and around just some of the Apple documentation around the technologies that I knew I wanted to use with shortcuts and app intents and things like that. And I put those in Google Notebook LM, and I just used it to ask it questions when I was confused about something, or why something might not be working. I would ask the question there. It would give me some really good ideas on what to look at and what to pursue to try to help fix the issues, because I realized that these things just weren't capable of producing output that worked consistently, that was free of errors. And so it was really a back and forth between these LLMs and the code they produced, and me processing what was produced, and then trying to troubleshoot, the issues.
Hey, my experience with vibe coding is that it's like the initial lift part that is hard, and having it come up with something, even if it's broken, still gives you like an idea to look at for structure.
That's exactly right. And that was my experience. I spent a lot of time, I would say probably 6 months or so, back and forth with some of these early models, and really ultimately landed on, I just don't have the time to put in the effort that's going to take to make this work. And so it kind of got, put to the side for a few months. And really, when some of the newer models came out, Google Gemini, 2.5 Pro, I think Chat GPT's, it was the O3 mini high reasoning model. When some of these models came out, I realized they were actually a whole lot better than the previous models at generating some of this code. And so I finally decided to pick it back up again, and really made a lot of quick progress. Now, I did have a kind of a base that I'd already worked through some that I wasn't very pleased with. And so that was the starting point that I went off of for some of these newer models. But with like Google Gemini, for example, my primary workflow that I used once 2.5 Pro came out is I just uploaded my code folder to Google Gemini. It could consume the entire thing, and then I could ask it questions or prompt it on certain things that I wanted to accomplish. Again, along with my code folder, I was uploading documentation as well, so that it had some of that context. But I realized, obviously, with putting some of the documentation there, it was a lot better at producing code that worked. And I would just use Xcode. I would copy and paste the code over into Xcode, try to run the app, review what it was trying to suggest. And if there was an error, I would just put it back into the tool and rerun it and say, hey, I had this error, help me fix it. And so I did that back and forth really for about 3 months before I got to a place where I thought, this actually, works pretty well, and it's doing what I want it to do. And I guess that was my workflow process around a lot of that. But I guess it's important to say that, a lot of these, with my app, for example, all it does is run a shortcut. I've exposed different actions to talk to the Planning Center API. So those are things I knew how to do, right? I could do that
Right.
in Power Automate. I could probably work my way through a Python script to connect and do those things. These were things I was knowledgeable about already and knew pretty much exactly what I wanted to do with my app, but I had no Swift code experience. And so I would just say that it worked, I think, for me enough because I had some knowledge of what exactly I wanted to do. I knew that the network requests, I knew the JSON responses, the APIs. I kind of had that foundational knowledge from my past experience that really also helped me jump forward with using this thing to actually produce something that worked.
Well, congratulations. And, I'm sure it's helping people.
Yeah, and it's something that I built really for myself and some of my team, and so we're using it here and there. When I tell people at my church to the staff, like, yeah, I built an app that you can use. They're not too convinced, I think, on the whole idea of using apps for just about anything, but it's been helpful personally to me, and how I build some of these automations that help for our weekly staff meeting or help with communication, things like that. And so it's been just a really neat experience for me to work through that entire process of building the app and getting it on the App Store and just learning a lot about app development. And again, that whole process, I guess since then, I would be crazy not to talk about Claude Code, Anthropic's LLM. I really kind of have gotten my hands on that recently, and it's been really kind of eye-opening to the whole process of developing and coding, especially how I worked through the process before with the copy and the paste and all that. Claude Code is really a powerful tool that's pretty neat to use.
Yeah, programming is one of those things where, I mean, your example is perfect, right? There's a documented API. You have some experience in this realm, and so it is kind of supercharging what you were able to do on your own. And I think that's sort of like one level of vibe coding. I do think there's like a secondary level of someone who's not a developer and asking for something and getting something back. And I have very complicated feelings about this as someone who works in app development and having I just don't know. Like I struggle with this as a topic a little bit because it feels like something that is particularly like a kind of a slippery slope type thing. And I know that's like a bad like philosophical argument, but I'm not even saying my feelings are logical about it. But it is one of those things where it's like kind of want the apps I'm using to be developed by somebody who understands how they work. And that's where I sort of run into the friction around some of this as a topic, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I definitely understand your concern because, as I was trying to figure out a lot of this, again, I knew some of the foundational things, but obviously I didn't know the Swift code. I didn't know the APIs that Apple allowed, had available to use. And so I had to really go and learn a lot of that before I could make this thing work. And so, the thing about all of the code that it produced, the things I'm dealing with, it's people's information in a church database. Like it's really pretty somewhat sensitive information for people. And so as I was doing that myself, anyways, I really that was pretty heavy on my mind that I have to know what this thing is doing because otherwise people might send their data off into the web somewhere, right? And so personally, I understand your concern, and it's something that I definitely consider to be a potential problem because these things can produce code, 1,000 lines of code, no problem. And if you don't know what that's doing, or you're not validating some of that code with the documentation and things, if you're unfamiliar with it, I believe it could get out of, a little out of control possibly, or out of your hands.
Yeah, I feel like, Stephen, you're right. Like anybody who puts out code they don't understand is putting their users at risk. I think vibe coding for yourself is very interesting. Like when you're trying to come up with an automation problem and it's something you're just using, you're not putting anybody else at risk. That's fine. But coming into today's show, because I knew Tyler had made an app, I thought, well, I should fiddle with this some more. And like I've been off and on for the last 10 years goofing with this idea of an app to make a list of the times you say no. If people have been listening to this show a long time, I've mentioned it before. I think an app where you just make a list of the times you say no. So you look at that before you say yes to something. It's a goofy concept, but for someone like me, it makes sense. And I've never been able to quite get the damn thing off the ground. I've spent plenty of time in Xcode over the years on it. And then like coming into today's show, I spent a morning on it last week with ChatGPT 5 and it totally fixed my code. And I understand what it is. And I just said, heck with it, I'll release it. So it's out there now, the no list. And it's just a list on your phone. Mm-hmm. Now, if I wanted an app to do something serious, like the stuff you're doing with David, or like the one I always think about is the Omni Group, right?
Yeah.
I use the Omni Group app. Every time I get an update from them, I look at all the stuff that they've done to improve it. Like there's a team of some of the smartest people that I've ever written for the Mac, and they can't get it right. They can't, it's never done. It always needs further maintenance and update. And that's a different thing than the thing I made. The thing I made is a single list, runs on your phone, right? So to me, vibe coding makes sense to an extent, mm-hmm. but then there's a line that you hit and you're like, no, I got to step away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a link to the no list in the show notes and it's great. Like I would never have guessed that it wasn't written by like an indie developer who has been doing this for years, right? But it does kind of open the door to questions, right? Like what I've thought about is in image generation, there's been a lot of work from Adobe and other companies to embed in the metadata of an image. This was edited with AI or created with AI. And I wonder if that will be an issue in software. Like, will the App Store get to a point where Apple feels like, yeah, hey, in App Store Connect, you need to check a box that this was vibe coded or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
I got to know the answer to that. This is in the time period where there have been stories like there was a dating app that was basically vibe coded, it leaked a bunch of data and some other things. An app like the No List, right? It's on your device. It's local. It's not. You're not syncing data around. You're not talking to a web server that was also vibe coded. Like that's where it gets scary, right? It's like, oh, I vibe coded an email service. Like what? Don't do that. Like that's a terrible idea.
Exactly.
And those lines are going to be different for everybody, right? There are going to be people listening to this who disagree with me or think I've not gone far enough. Like, and I don't really know where I stand. It's just like a lot of questions in my mind. But it without a doubt, we are at a point where AI can, again, to use the term I keep coming back to, supercharge your development, right? Like I have this idea, I know some Swift, I know some Swift UI, or like in my case, right? Like I know some PHP and some Ruby on Rails, and I work on my site and I work a little bit in the Relay CMS. Like I could use these tools to help with that work. In fact, I did use ChatGPT to solve some issues I was having on 512 pixels with my redesign. For me, it was, okay, I'm like 85% there on my own, but like I'm having this issue. Can you help me get over the finish line? But all that's on a spectrum, right? And all of it is complicated. And I just wonder how platforms like Apple or Google with the Play Store, like, are they going to have to speak to this at some point? And what my guess actually is that the cat's already out of the bag. Like it's too late for them to try to stuff it back in.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting topic. I want to talk about the no list more on the feedback episode. But yeah. So I spent a morning on it, but like to use your example, I was probably 60% of the way there with stuff I'd already written. But boy, that last 40% was necessary. And, it's a simple app. And just a couple weeks ago on the show, I was saying, yeah, you can vibe code, just don't share it with anybody. And then I put this on the App Store 2 weeks later. So There you go, Sparky. But I considered it. It's like it's an app that's on your device. It's literally a list. It doesn't talk to the internet. It's the world. I used to do this with an Apple Note before. Now I do it with a little vibe coded app I made.
Yeah.
So, and to me, it's more of a experiment than anything else. But it is interesting that Tyler, you inspired it, because you coming on the show is what got me to finally try and get it cleaned up with AI. And I didn't even use the better model. I didn't go to the Claude Code. I just used ChatGPT 5. I've got a $20 a month account, so I figured, well, I'm paying for it, and it helped me get things sorted out.
Yeah, well, congratulations on getting your app on the App Store. I mean, it felt like a big win when I did that. That was kind of my goal. I knew that this tool is something that I wanted to use, and I wanted to put it on the App Store. So, congratulations.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm glad it's out there. I hope people use it, but it's just a weird thing that came together pretty quickly. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Steam Clock. They make great apps, full design and development from demos to details. Go to steamclock.com/Mac. Steam Clock Software is a design and development studio that ships great mobile apps. They work with growing tech companies to level up their customer-facing experiences on iOS and Android. Often, Steam Clock's clients know they need a great mobile app to grow their business, but they don't have the capacity to build one themselves. Or if they take a first crack at the problem, they often wind up with an app that's kind of janky. What all of Steam Clock's clients have in common, though, is that they care about great customer experiences. While Steam Clock can build apps using React Native or other cross-platform tools, they also have deep expertise with building excellent native apps in Swift and Kotlin. They're also great at helping companies weigh the trade-offs of these different approaches. So if that sounds like you, if your business is growing and you want your customers to have a great app experience, visit steamclock.com/Mac and get in touch with Steam Clock. Once again, that's steamclock.com/Mac. Get in touch with them and see how they can help. Our thanks to Steam Clock for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay.
All right, Tyler, one thing that we spoke about in preparation for this was Claude Desktop and MCP. For those who aren't familiar with MCP, can you give us a crash course?
Yeah, so MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, and how I understand it is, basically it's something that Anthropic has developed, a protocol that they've developed. They kind of call it the USB-C of AI, and so basically it's just an integration, right? It's a standard format of an integration, so different technologies and different services can integrate with these LLMs. And so what Claude has done, or what Anthropic has done with Claude, is they are starting to build these integrations within of course, their desktop app. But they've also allowed, Claude Code, which Claude Code is just a version of Claude that runs in your terminal. And so they also have the MCP integrations there. And so, for example, just a few of the MCP connections that I'm using, they have, for example, the service Airtable, the web database. There's an MCP server for that, and so that connection allows you to go and basically read data from your tables. You can write data back to it. And what that does is just really opens the context window of these LLMs to your data, your information, and actually allows it to really kind of take action, more action, I would say, than just chatting with them back and forth. Another MCP server that I have that I'm using is one called an AppleScript MCP. And so basically what it allows you to do is it allows the LLM, I guess I should say, to actually write some AppleScript that it can execute on your machine. And so the one thing I like a lot about with Claude Code specifically is that there's a lot of back and forth between me and the LLM. So I can tell it to just run without any confirmation, or I can tell it, I want you to do this, write the code, and then, I'm going to confirm its execution, which
Right.
is how I normally do things,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because it's controlling my computer, right? And so I don't want it to go crazy on me. But I would say maybe once or twice have I not actually gone with what it said to do with some of these Apple scripts, for example, and some of the things that it's doing. So, for example, it can, see, you can feed it documentation, but a lot of times it already knows enough to say, for example, I wanted to add some information into the Things app, the project manager app. And so I just told it to write an Apple script to do this thing and pull this information from a different part of my computer and add it into Things. And it did it no problem the first try.
Yeah, I feel like Apple Script, regular expressions, and like a lot of stuff that's a little like edgy to program because they're hard to get consistent. Like that stuff that having AI run for you makes a lot of sense. But I haven't gone down the MCP rabbit hole because I just feel a little nervous about giving it that much control. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
I agree, David. I think if you, of course, just get on the web and search MCP, there is a
Yeah,
whole lot out there that probably isn't great. With Claude specifically, within their desktop app now, they have some of these things built in, so you can go and they kind of have a library there, which makes
yeah.
me, anyways, feel a bit better about utilizing some of those MCP integrations because I feel like Anthropic has vetted them and they're available there for use right inside their desktop app. So again, that's just one thing. I wouldn't maybe recommend going online and just download trying to install any MCP that you find
Sure.
because just anyone can go and make these things and expose them however they want.
The other thing for me is I struggle with the utility of AI in like personal productivity, which sounds weird, but I feel like having an automated system to manage tasks, calendar events, and all the kind of stuff that you can use with an effective MCP system. I feel like that's the part as the human I should be doing. And I'm not very good at verbalizing it, but I feel like it's just something that, like the little experiments I've done with this in terms of personal productivity, have not been satisfactory. And frankly, I realize that no, I need to decide what's actually on calendar and what's on the list.
Yeah, and I would say I agree with that, David. My own life and my own calendar and task are not just something that are just overwhelming to me, and so I'm able to manage that pretty well myself. But to your point, I guess how you're defining personal productivity, some of the things that I've just found incredibly useful with some of these tools. I guess I'll briefly talk about Microsoft again with their Copilot. So it's the
Sure.
LLM that Microsoft has built. It's my understanding it's built on just different open AI models,
Yeah.
GPT, 4.0 and GPT 5 now. And so you can go in there and change those as you're using it. But one of the things that's been really interesting to me as I'm trying to use it and integrate it into my daily workflow is that it's really integrated into their entire ecosystem already. So, for example, Copilot can go and search through all your emails, search through your Microsoft Teams messages, look at your calendar events. It can go and look at OneNote and the notes. And so all within basically a single prompt. And so it's been pretty interesting to just kind of ask it things at the start of the day. For example, what's on the agenda today? And it
Sure.
can go and look at all of the things, find open items that I may have, and just return those in a single prompt. And so that's one thing that's been pretty interesting for me, and trying to use to again just save me a little time here and there. Of course, I can go into my task manager, I can go into my calendar and view those things myself. But it's been pretty neat to just have it return those things to me all at once, from across the board.
How do you find Copilot compares to Apple Intelligence?
That
Is
was
that a trick? Is that a trick question?
I was gonna say,
No, I'm legitimately curious. I've heard different reports, and I haven't spent a lot of time with Copilot.
Sure. I guess on the one hand, I would just say that Copilot feels much more mature at this point than say Apple Intelligence. At least in my experience with some of the Apple Intelligence. The thing that Microsoft has done really well again is just how it's so deeply integrated in their entire ecosystem already. Now, I assume that that's kind of where we're headed with Apple Intelligence. The thing with Copilot, you really still experience sometimes. I think the common term is hallucinations, but basically, like, I've noticed sometimes that maybe it misses a single email that I expect to be there, or maybe it completely gets the email wrong and it draws a conclusion from that email that might not be super accurate. So these things, while they do, help with some of the time management there, I don't trust them completely at this point still. And so I'm hopeful that with like Apple Intelligence, as we get more of that integrated into like our device, it's what I expect these things to do really well for us. Look at all of our contacts that we've allowed access to and help us organize our thoughts, organize our day. I can see that being a potential future, but it just doesn't really feel like we're there yet, even with how Copilot is really already integrated.
Yeah. Well, I know they have a ways to go. I was just curious if Copilot was that much further ahead. It does make sense though with their investment in OpenAI. They're definitely deeper down the stack.
Yes, and again, they're really how to say this. They have Power Automate, which is their web-based automation platform. And so
Yeah.
they're really doing some pretty interesting things with Copilot and what they are calling agents, which are just, you can create an LLM based action that can process data and output it in whatever format you desire. But in addition to that, they're also integrating all of these thousands of connectors they've already built through Power Automate, which are very structured and rigid. But they're kind of blending these two things where I could have, for example, an LLM based action process some information that's spit out from a rigid action that's connected to a different service that's pulling data in. And so I'm pretty intrigued to see what Microsoft does in the future with some of this. It's I think could be pretty powerful just because they have this entire ecosystem that they've already built, which of course is really business oriented, I would say.
Yeah.
And so, thinking about the Apple Intelligence stuff, I almost consider that kind of a separate tool because it's going to know, me, right? It's going to know my personal information. It's going to know, hopefully, my health data and things like that can go into these models and get processed in a way that I feel okay about.
mhm.
From your lips to Tim's ears,
That's right.
or whoever's in charge of Siri at this point. I don't even know.
Mike Rockwell, he's out there
Yes, Mike Rockwell. Yes, please, Mike.
doing his thing.
Like I want to be like make those videos like Princess Leia. Help us, Mike Rockwell. You're our only hope.
Yeah.
Tyler, we're running along, but you had one app listed on your favorite apps and services that I need the story behind, and that is Clone Hero. What are you doing what is this app, Tyler? What are you doing?
Yeah, so like I said, I was not into technology growing up, but I was into video games, and so I was in the era of Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Were very popular when I was going through school, and so I played a lot of that. And recently, one of my buddies pulled out his Nintendo Wii, and he had a version of Guitar Hero that we opened up and played, and so that kind of took me down this rabbit hole of I wanted to go find some used gear and buy it and play it, but it led me to this open source project called Clone Hero. And so what it is really just this community around this same idea of Guitar Hero. And so it's really neat. The developer kind of has his entire timeline of development documented. And so you can see really early versions that he created. Again, just kind of replicating this idea of the Guitar Hero game where you have the controller and the notes fall and you have to hit them in rhythm to the song, right? And so I thought, oh, well, this is neat. I need to check this out. And so he has a version of it that runs on your Mac. So I downloaded it to my MacBook. There are thousands of songs that the community has created to basically install and put into this game. And there's I think a Google sheet floating around that has, hundreds and hundreds of these songs that you can go and download. So from that, I found a used Nintendo Wii Guitar Hero controller, and I bought an adapter that's basically just a USB-C adapter to the Wii controller, and it's some 3D printed adapter that I found online that someone make. I think the link's there. But basically, once you do that and turn on this game, you have a pretty much a version of Guitar Hero running. And so I've been playing that. Again, it's bringing back a lot of the nostalgia around Guitar Hero from my younger days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked because my daughter and her group of friends have like pooled their money and assembled a full Guitar Hero set. They have an old Wii, they've got the drums and the guitars, and they get extra parts sometimes off eBay because they break. And they do that once in a while. They have a party where they just play that game and they love it so much. So this is interesting. I thought I'll pass this along, but it's just strange to me that kind of era of fake, rock guitar drumming, video game just went away. I was surprised it didn't come with the new generations.
Yeah, best I can tell, you're right. It pretty much disappeared. I believe that Epic Games has kind of integrated a version of this into I guess it's like Fortnite is itself, but they have this rhythmic type game that you can use your controller or a modern guitar with. I've not really messed with that because I kind of found Clone Hero and thought, oh, this is perfect. Clone Hero, you can also plug in a drum set and a microphone and some of those things as well. So it covers pretty much the entire rock band idea. But yeah, it's a fun game to play and something that I didn't know existed.
This is my favorite thing on the internet, like a community that goes super deep on a super specific thing, right? Like the people behind this project are the experts in this. And it's the thing that most people will never come across or care about. But if you're into this, this is gold. And like that is the internet at its absolute finest. There are 50,000 people online in this Discord, according to this wiki page. Like absolutely amazing.
Well, Guitar Hero was fun.
It was fun.
Did you ever play it? Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, I'd love to see that stuff come back in a little easier way.
When I was working at the Apple authorized service provider, we had Guitar Hero in the lab, and in between iBook repairs or whatever, we would play some Guitar Hero. It was great.
Tyler, if people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
Well, that's a good question. I'm truly not on the internet all that much. I have an email that I use for some of my app development and consulting type things that I do. That's just tyler@mctech.biz.
MCTECH.biz.
That's correct.
Got it.
Yeah, but outside of that, we have a live stream on our church website that I would say if you're really interested in going and checking out, you're more than welcome to do that. That's NashvilleFBC.org.
All right. We're the Mac Power Users. You can find us at relay.fm/MPU. If you'd like to become a More Power Users subscriber, you can get the ad-free extended version of the show. Today, we're going to be talking about Find My on that extended version. Go ahead and sign up there at relay.fm/MPU. Thank you to our sponsors, 1Password, Indeed, and Steam Clock, and we'll see you next week.